Good morning. I've been getting a lot of emails, text messages, phone calls, and Facebook posts asking me my thoughts on the events of yesterday, December 14th, 2012. So instead of answering them all individually, I thought I'd just make a post, a video post, and basically lay out a lot of the misconceptions with gun control laws, and the crap that's being spewed on the internet in regards to them. If you know me, you know that I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment and I believe in the right to keep and bear arms. I'm a avid firearms enthusiast. I'm not a crazy, I'm not a doomsday prepper or anything of that nature. But I do believe in the right to keep and bear arms. I have firearms, I shoot them often, and I believe in the right of concealed carry firearms. So one of the things that was posted on my Facebook wall yesterday that was brought up was that the number of deaths in the United States from firearms is this huge number versus that of other countries that have very strict firearms laws. So let's break those down. Last year, and I'm rounding these numbers up, last year there was about 11,000 homicides from firearms. Now you take that, I think Japan had something like eight. Great Britain was somewhere in the mid 20s or something like that. All right, I got it. One thing I didn't research is what was the statistics of other types of death and killings in those countries. I didn't look it up because the point is, doesn't matter. Um, People are going to always argue that, well, that doesn't matter because it wasn't with a gun. So, okay. So we got about 11,000 a year. Actually, there's a lot of studies that have shown that since 1903, particularly in the last 20 years, firearms injuries and deaths have gone down by almost 50% in the last 20 years. So, safe firearms handling and the use of firearms in violent crimes overall is decreasing. But let's talk about this. Non firearm homicides equated last year alone to over 17,000 deaths. So you put those together, that's 28,000, less than half of which were committed using a firearm. Um, about 25,000 people die from falls. 25,000 or so people die from drug overdoses. Now, drugs are illegal, but you have more people dying from the use of illegal drugs than you do from a firearm. Motor vehicle crashes equate to about 35,000 deaths a year. Alcohol abuse, 108,000 deaths. Medical errors, 195,000 deaths. And the use of tobacco, 529,000 deaths a year. Those statistics are taken from both the Centers for Disease Control and the FBI. So, where's the big issue with firearms? Should we limit the use of motor vehicles? It's already illegal for somebody to drink and drive, yet they do it every day. It's already illegal for people to take drugs, yet they continue to take drugs, kill themselves, commit violent crimes, not just murders, but rapes, thefts, with the use and without the use of a weapon of some kind. In fact, the FBI reported that the number one weapon used in a violent crime is not a firearm, but a baseball bat. Let me say that again. According to the FBI, the number one weapon used in a violent crime is a baseball bat. China yesterday, same day as the mass shooting in Connecticut, you had one person wielding a knife, went into an elementary school, kids between the ages of 6 and 11, stabbed or slashed 22 kids. 2010, China reported that mostly middle-aged men were responsible for either the killing or injuring of children in schools with the use of knives. Should we take away all the steak knives, all the chef knives, all the cutting utensils, give everybody just plastic knives? That won't solve the problem either. In fact, a 25-year-old broke up with his girlfriend in China and wanted to get revenge on all of society, so he started slashing women in a subway. He was finally arrested. Let me just say this about mass shootings. The average number of deaths in a mass shooting is about 18.25. When stopped by a civilian, the average number of deaths in a potential mass shooting incident is 2.2 victims. Last year or this year, we have had a huge increase in mass shootings. I agree. 38% of those were in schools, 17% of those were in colleges or universities, 10% in churches, and then the rest of them were committed in workspace environments, churches, or sorry, not churches, movie theaters, malls, other environments. Now, of those, there was 50% of those had some form of intervention. 50%. 2/3 of those interventions were done by civilians, both armed and unarmed civilians. 1/3 of those, 1/3, were intervened with law enforcement. That means you, the public, the general person, has a greater chance of intervening and stopping a mass attack than a law enforcement officer does. The average law enforcement response time is about 10 minutes in the United States, give or take, depending on where you're at in circumstances. 10 minutes. Average response of a civilian with concealed carry should be about 2 seconds. That should be about what your draw to trigger press time is. You could stop approximately 16.2 people from being killed or injured with the use of a firearm by a responsible, trained civilian. During most of these incidents, resistance was stopped as soon, the event had stopped as soon as resistance was encountered. That means that not always was a shot fired. In fact, there was a vice principal in a school. A kid had come in to kill a bunch of kids. Vice principal went out to his car, got a shotgun that he had there, brought it into the school, stopped the attack, did not fire a shot. In a majority of those 50 instances where the intervention occurred, shots were not fired by civilians or law enforcement. Many times the attacker decided to take his own life. But the point is that once resistance was encountered, the attack stopped. Now let me just say this. Who's really to blame? When are we going to put the blame on the person versus an inanimate object? Look, I'm overweight. I know that. I don't blame McDonald's. I blame myself. I blame my eating habits, my laziness, my lack of exercise. That's made me overweight. Not McDonald's, not the utensils that I use. But we don't do that. We don't blame them. Let me tell you this, that the only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is going to be a good guy with a gun. Because if you enact all these laws, gun control laws, all that crap, the bad guys are still going to have guns. So who becomes the victim? We do. The law-abiding, righteous citizen. The guys out there doing what we're supposed to do. Now you take our right to protect and defend ourselves away from us. All right, you want to change the Constitution because you don't like guns or you don't believe in guns. That's not the point. Look at the point and what the forefathers wanted us to have with the use of the right to keep and bear arms. It was to protect ourselves, not just from a tyrannical government, but from our neighbors who wanted to cause us harm, or anybody else who wanted what we want or have. And that's a whole nother issue. You know, our society has bred into this new generation this self-entitlement generation, as I call them. You have what I want, so I should give it to you. I'm sorry. You want what I have, so I should just give it to you? That's crap. Get off your ass and go work for it. Get a job, save your money, pay your bills, and then you could get what I have legally and fairly, just like I did. I don't owe you anything. Ronald Reagan said we must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It's time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions. Each individual is accountable for his actions. Ronald Reagan said that when he was president or before. What a concept. We have lost that in our country. If gun laws were to be enacted and stricter gun laws, the total elimination of civilian right to bear arms and keep arms, and that's going to solve all our problems, a lot of people say. Well, I want to point you to two cities in our country, Chicago and Washington, D.C. Probably the strictest gun laws of any cities in our country, yet two of the most violent. More gun-related crimes happen in those two cities than anywhere else in the country, statistically. But it's a gun-free city. There's no guns allowed there. So how does that happen? California also has very strict gun laws, and the guns that you are allowed to own have to have severe modifications to them. How has that helped with gang violence, drugs, and everything else? It hasn't. Generally, the states with the most strict gun laws and no conceal carry laws, meaning you cannot conceal carry legally, have a higher violent crime rate. And of those crimes, a majority of them are committed with guns from criminals. People who shouldn't have those guns to begin with because they're already violent offenders. They have a record. Some of them may be first-time offenders, absolutely. But they didn't go through the legal channels and processes to get those firearms. But they have them. Drugs are illegal. How's that working out for us? We have a severe drug problem. Gun-free zones, they don't work. They're an advertising card to the criminals that, hey, I could go into that place and not worry about one of these guys with a concealed carry permit coming up and stopping what I want to do. Kill a bunch of people, rape a woman, whatever, kidnap a kid, because they're obeying the law. They're not going to have a gun. Eliminating guns won't eliminate violence. It's just going to change the way that violence is enacted. They'll use baseball bats, golf clubs, knives. And a lot of the crimes that are committed with knives aren't done with tactical or military style knives. They're done with kitchen utensils. Assault weapons ban, don't get me started on the definition of an assault weapon, because that's just ludicrous anyways. Weapons don't assault. All right? A gun, a firearm is an inanimate object. It doesn't do anything on its own. Guns don't kill people. People kill people using a gun or a knife or a baseball bat or a hockey club stick, a golf club, whatever. The assault weapons ban, that didn't work. You want to bring it back? It didn't work the first time. What's it going to do this time? All right? Guns out on the street with criminals were still as prevalent then as they are now during the ban. Richard Heinlein said, an armed society is a polite society. Manners are good when you may have to back up your actions with your life. So think about that. Last thing I want to say, the last thing is the responsibility to protect yourself and your loved ones falls to you. Not to the government, not to anyone else, but to you. So Be prepared in all areas of your life. Stop living in the white, folks. And if you don't know what that means, look up the Cooper color code by a guy named Jeff Cooper. Look up the color code and see what living in the white means. Become a sheepdog. If you don't know what a sheepdog is, read On Killing by David Grossman and look up the Parable of the Sheepdog, I think it's called, by Charles Riggs. Sorry, I had to look at my notes there. By Charles Riggs. Read those two stories. David Grossman has a good article that he wrote on being a sheepdog and being sheep. Protect yourselves. Don't give up that right. Don't let anybody else tell you what's right and wrong, and don't let anybody else take that right from you, whether it's with a firearm or anything else. Right? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Support your Second Amendment. Support concealed carry. And support the right to keep and bear arms. Because, the only thing that's going to kill a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Especially a civilian who's trained and responsible to use that firearm. Especially when law enforcement is 10 or so minutes away. I hope this answers some of your questions that you had for me. If you care to discuss it, I'm still available, and I will continue to discuss and give you my opinions on this topic. Thank you, and have a great day.